Hello, it's me, Andreen, Jewish American Priestess, and I'm here to do a reading for you for the upcoming new moon of Elul. Now, Elul, the first day of Elul is on Sunday the 28th, but I'm going to get a reading up before then. Usually I do a reading for Shabbat as it's coming up, but since we have the new moon coming up and tomorrow is Yom Kippur Katan, which is again that half-day fast that we do if one is, observant in that way before the new moon, because we don't fast on Friday because of Shabbat, we don't fast on Saturday because of Shabbat, and we have to do it before the new moon, which is on Sunday. So we're fasting tomorrow if we are fasting, and not everybody does, and that's fine. But since we do have the new moon coming up, we're going to do a reading for that new moon. And I have 3 different herbal plants that I've pulled out of my garden for you to choose from today. The first in this setting is the mint plant. And it's in flower right now, and the bees are going crazy out there. And that's what it looks like. The second is the flowering sage. And it's got a beautiful purple flower. It's kind of hard to see in this light. And that's what that looks like. And the third is this gorgeous leek flower. I let my leeks go to seed this year because it is the Shemitah year, and which is almost over. So it has this gorgeous plume on the top for my leeks. So choose one of those 3 herbs for you today, and I will do a reading for each of them in turn, and I'll try to put this timestamps below if I can figure out how to do that. So take a minute, choose which herb resonates for you, and I will see you in your reading. Right, for those of you who chose mint, this is your herb and your reading. I'm going to set it up here in the center of the mirror. Mirrors are also significant for Elul because it is the month that corresponds with the shrine keeper in the Kohenet tradition. And the herb mint, I'm looking it up right now to get a better concept of what it's about. It is the planet Mercury, so I'm guessing it has to do with communication. The elements are both air and fire. It's used for healing mixtures and spells. It can be worn at the wrist to protect against illness. It is, if you put fresh mint on your altar, it will attract good spirits, this says. You can keep it for protection in your home. You can keep it in your purse to attract money and prosperity. It promotes visionary dreams, and it banishes negative energy. It's great for digestive problems. It says if fresh leaves are rubbed against the head, it will supposedly help relieve headaches. I've never tried that. It's, of course, very aromatic. It says it can be burned to increase sexual desire and to banish unwelcome entities, to attract good spirits, and to attract money. The smell possesses strong healing vibrations and protective powers. It energizes and sharpens thoughts. So that's mint for you, and it is that you've chosen for your reading today. So let's pull out some Hebrunes and see what comes up. I'll set that right there. Okay, let's start with 3. See if we end up with more. So the first one we're pulling out for you today, we're just going to go in order left to right. This is the first one. It is the letter Het. The second letter coming out is the letter Bet. Let's get closer. And the third Hebrew for you today coming out is the letter Kaf. Alright, we'll start with those. So we're going to talk about the letter Het first. Het is the 8th letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it corresponds in gematria, therefore, to infinity, because 8 is one more than 7. It represents that which comes after creation, 7 days of creation, which is the infinite. And the number 8, of course, also on its side looks like the infinity symbol. And 8 is corresponds interestingly to the gullet in the body, which is the throat. And it's a gullet in a chicken, but it's a throat in a human. And it has to do with this foundation of speech. So interesting that we just discovered that Mint has to do with Mercury, which is the communication planet. So something about communication is coming up for you right now. Chet also portends the idea of a chuppah, which is the marriage canopy that brings together the feminine and masculine aspects of the divine, and in partnership. So it has to do in some ways about communication, maybe around a partnership. It also is chai, which is the life force in the body and soul. And so something having to do with communication and partnership and life is up. And this idea of infinity, this infinite, maybe this infinite partnership with the divine, or this long-term partnership, which seems like an eternity or infinity with a person, also having to do with possibly a marriage canopy. And the second letter in our spread today is the letter Bet, and Bet has to do with home. It is a house. It is the second letter in the alphabet, and it is also about life. It has the binary of life and death in the Sefer Yetzirah. So in the body, it has to do with mouth. So again, communication, more communication here. It is one of the double letters, and it's the body in the fact that the body is the soul, the home of the soul. And so we have first a chuppah, a communication and connection, and then a home that's come together out of that, in terms of also the mouth and being spoken into creation. Bet being the first letter of the Torah in the word Breshit. So, and also the foundation of life. We've got Chai for life, and the foundation of life and death in the binary for the Bet. It also corresponds to Shabbat in time. Shabbat, which is to sit in the house or rest. So it has to do with rest, taking care of the body, taking care of the home, taking care of the temple of yourself, the temple of your living place. So that's where we are right now. And then we have the letter Kaf. And Kaf is a palm. It is the palm of a hand. So it's about giving and receiving. It is also could be about anything one can do with his hand. So it could be about power and oppression or suppressing something. It is about power. So koach begins with the chaf, and so it can be about power. It could be the palm of a hand or the sole of a foot. So again, about giving and receiving, about power or suppression. And it's about being covered up. So the word kippah or keter also begin with chaf, and so it can be about about something that covers over the top of one's head, and or the skach, which is on the top of a sukkah. It has got 2 chafs in it. And so it can be about a covering over something. And in the world, it corresponds to the sun in the sky. So it's the double letter that rules over the sun in the planetary realms. and it rules over the binary of wealth and poverty. So that's coming up in the near future in this particular position in the reading. So we've got a chuppah, we've got a home, and we've got a covering, a power dynamic, or a give and take. It can also correspond to pain and sorrow. So it can be about weeping or being disheartened. It has to do with, there's a lot of words that have to do with like pain, sorrow, weeping, disheartened, being ashamed or humiliated or cut off, that start with kaf. So I'm not sure whether we're talking about wealth or poverty here. We can get a little bit clarity by pulling out a couple more letters here. First of all, let's pull out a couple that have to do with Beit here in our present circumstances. The thing that's going to help us with regards to that is the letter Yud. And the letter Yud is the smallest of the letters. It is the small letter that contains a lot. It is about sort of that one point out of which all things come into creation, like the Big Bang. It can also have to do with like about creation physically, like a sperm or a seed of some sort. So, and also the first letter of the divine name. So in this current situation, what's going to be useful is focusing on that oneness, focusing on the one thing that is got the potential for growth. And then what's not going to help us in this situation is we've got the letter Hey just below. And the letter Hey is about Hey has to do with about unity and completeness. It has to do with being present, and it's also two of the letters of the divine name, and it has to do with sight and light. So it's the number 5, so it has to do with 5 fingers or the action in the world. So I think in this position where we're talking about what's going to help is not so much action, not so much what we can see, but more about the potential that maybe we can't see. And just being present at this time rather than moving forward into action with the hands. And again, like I said, it's about light and sight. Light is mentioned 5 times in the story of creation. So the letter Hey has to do with light, and it is connected to sight in the foundation of the Sefer Yetzirah. So it could have to do with that. So instead of focusing on what one can see, instead of focusing on the light or about the action of the times, instead be present, sit, and focus on potential for what is to come. And what's to come is this idea of, again, wealth and poverty. We have a binary, so what can we do to encourage the right outcome here in the future? We have the letter Gimel. And what's not going to help us is the letter Vav. The letter Gimel is about movement. It's about walking. It's a letter that looks like a camel, or represents a camel, and it is walking and running and returning. It is the number 3 in the Gematria, and it's the binary of peace and evil. So it's like Bet is about life and death. So like in the Garden of Eden, we've got the tree of life, but we've also got the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So we want to focus on peace. We want to focus on wholeness in this time. And in our attempts to be connected and give and receive and strive toward spiritual wealth, if not physical wealth. And what's not going to help us is the letter Vav. Interestingly, Vav is about connection too. It's literally the word and it's also a hook that connects things together. It's like a spine, and yet in the body it corresponds to the gallbladder. So it's also one of the letters of the name of God. So we've got the Yud, He, and the Vav, and the He. Interestingly, 2 of these letters being on the lower line. So that can be perceived as something that isn't helping, or it can be perceived as something that's internal. So we have this internal connection, this connection with the divine inside of ourselves, connection with our own selves, and similarly that presence within ourselves, showing up for ourselves. And those seem to be the directions that is going to help us in this situation of creating home, creating space, a place to exist in our life, to rest, and also to receive and be protected, or if we are in a time of sadness, moving through that sadness, not running away from it, but staying present internally, and staying connected to ourselves and to our higher power through Shekhinah, through all of this. And the outcome in this situation, as we get through this into the month of Elul, is Dalet. And Dalet is a doorway. It is the doorway into the new year. As we sit with ourselves during this time of contemplation that Elul manifests as, communication is going to be key. Clearly, we've got communication here, the mouth, and this idea of communication here. But internal contemplation, internal sitting and connecting, and that will bring us to Dalet. Dalet, again, is that doorway and humility. It harkens to the name David Melech, who's the King David, the king who came from humble beginnings and remained humble even once he was king. And Dalet has to do with wisdom and foolishness. So ideally we are leaning toward wisdom at this time as we work our way through whatever it is we're dealing with, whether it be protection, giving and receiving, or sadness that comes with the Chaf, moving through that and staying connected to ourselves, being present with ourselves, remembering to rest, remembering to focus on that one point that has the potential, and moving through that doorway when we get finally to the other side, as we move through Elul, this time of contemplation. And that is your reading today for those of who chose the mint. Remember to communicate effectively, both with yourself, with your loved ones, and also with the divine. This is a good time for prayer, contemplation, listening. And Shavua Tov, I'd rather say Chodesh Tov, happy new month, and we'll see you soon. Hello, those of you who chose the sage. This is your reading, and I'm going to talk a little bit about sage first. Sage is got a variety of magical properties. It is, according to some understandings, corresponding to the planet Jupiter, which is the largest planet in our solar system. It is the element of air. White sage can cleanse a space of unwelcome spirits and negative energy. Is that an unwelcome spirit? No, that's just a spider web. You can carry leaves in your wallet to promote financial gain. It can be used to purify sacred or ritual spaces. It says that, of course, we should be wary of cultural appropriation because Native American practice of smudging is a closed culture. You can still burn or scatter sage for its cleansing purposes, but don't call it smudging. It can be burned to help commune with other entities and spirits. It's also used for purification, protection, wisdom, longevity, health, intuition, divination, luck, prosperity, money, spirituality, menopause, psychic ability, clarification, inner guides, healing, and vision. It's got a lot going on with sage. It's a remedy for stomach problems, ulcers, gas, etc. Expels worms, and it can treat sexual problems. When burnt, it cleanses a space, and it brings wisdom. It's, sage, as in a sage person. So we're going to set that right here and pull out some letters for you today about what's coming up for you in the month of Elul. And I have, I'm going to start with 3. The first letter that comes out is Samech. Our second letter, I'm going to do this here, is the letter Gimel. And the third letter coming out right now is the letter Mem. Okay. So, starting with Samech. Samech is, my hands are covered in the clay. Samech is a circle, and it has to do with circles and cycles. It is the number 60 in Gematria. And 60 is, of course, the number of minutes in an hour and the number of seconds in a minute. It's also the number of seconds in a circle, if you measure that way. It has to do with being surrounded, being surrounded like a hug, with support. So it has to do with cycles and circles and wheels and seasons. It is the first letter of the word Smicha, which is ordination, and Simcha, which is joy or celebration. It is a circle with all points are equal from the center, and so it's this idea of support and being encircled or surrounded by a thing. And in the Paleo Hebrew, it is looks very different. It looks like a thorn, and it is a thorn. And so it has to do with protection, but it can also be agitation. In the Sefer Yetzirah, Samech corresponds to the foundation of agitation. And agitation can be a positive thing, as in like, oh, I'm agitated and really happy and excited, or it can be a negative thing, as in I'm agitated and irritated and annoyed. So some kind of agitation, either happy or sad, can be there. But this idea of the thorn hedge being used as a protection around either a field where we keep livestock, or around our home, just to protect us from intruders walking in, is represented in this letter. So Samech can be, again, this thorny thing, but it can also be a protective thing. What else about that? It is, it is what it is. It talks about nullification. So there's this concept in Judaism where 1/60th of something becomes nullified to a greater thing. So, for instance, if you had something that was not kosher and a piece of it fell into some food that was kosher, if it's less than 1/60th, then it does not harm the kashrut of that item. So there's a lot of ideas about nullification. It says in some of the mystical texts that sleep is 1/60th of death, that fire is 1/60th of Gehenna, that Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come, Olam Haba, and that dreams are 1/60th of prophecy. So this idea of the samech and the 60th of a thing may have to do with what has just come before us here. And these ideas of cycles and circles and surrounding and being protected. There was something else I wanted to say about the thorns. Oh, there's a midrash that says that the burning bush that Moshe encountered in the wilderness when he received the call to return to Egypt was a thorn bush, and that it burned and agitated him into the action that he had to go back to Egypt to help liberate the Israelite people. So that's what's up with Samech, this idea of protection, surrounding, and thorniness. And in the center of our reading we have the letter Gimel. Gimel is a movement. It's a camel. It is forward movement. It's like a walking foot, and it has to do with good deeds, giving tzedakah to the poor. Some say that this is the picture of a wealthy person rushing to give tzedakah to someone who is impoverished. It has to do with the number 3. It is the third letter, and so it has to do with the 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, the 3 parts of the Israelite people, that is the Kohen, the Levites, and the Israeli. And it has to do with this binary of peace and evil. So Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, had a tree that was for life and a tree that was for good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. And we were exhorted to choose the life, and instead the first humans chose to have knowledge instead. And that is how things have worked out. We know a lot of things, but possibly we don't get a lot of life. But interestingly, in space, Gimel also is the letter that rules over the planet Jupiter, like Sage. So that's fascinating to me, that we have this connection between Gimel and the Sage. So for whatever that's worth, the planet Jupiter is involved here. And Jupiter is a big energy planet. So that's what's up right now. We have this idea of movement, forward movement, progress. And tzedek, right? So Jupiter in Hebrew is tzedek, which means justice, and tzedakah, of course, the giving of charity to people, or making just the inequity between wealth and poverty is involved here. So something about that is up right now. And in the near future, we have the letter Mem, and Mem is one of the mother letters. It is the mother letter that corresponds to the foundation element of water. And Mem is Mayim Chaim, the waters of life. I'm going to try to not put shadow on everything as I reach with my left hand instead of my right hand. So Mem is the waters of life, and some say that Torah is that water that comes to us to give us life. But it is what sustains us in the desert. It's also correspondent to Miriam, the prophetess, who in the desert had a magical well that would follow around and provide that nourishing water for all of the people. and it corresponds to the number 40 in Gematria, and the number 40 is the number of weeks of gestation for a womb. And what do we gestate in? We gestate in water. So it has to do with gestation, it has to do with pregnancy, the belly in the body, and that idea of something that is gestating and ready to be born. So it's about motherhood. It's about just water and nourishment and being ready to give birth to a thing. The number 40 shows up a ton of times in the Torah. We have the 40 days on Sinai where Moshe went up to get the 10 Commandments and the rest of the law. We have the 40 days of rain with Noah and the ark, and 40 years that we wandered in the wilderness. So that's what's coming up in the near future. And I'm going to pull out a couple more letters here to clarify some of this as to how this can be manifesting for you right now in the month of Elul. So what's going to help us right now as we go through this time of movement and active movement forward in Gimel is the letter Zayin. The letter Zayin corresponds to the number 7, so it's about luck. It's about completion of like the days of creation, and it is also about power because it corresponds to a sword or a scepter. So sovereignty, holding on to one's own power, fighting for what needs to be fought for is up right now, and then what's not going to help us or what's going to maybe be internal is Beit, and Beit is about a house, so it's about being home. And interestingly, we've got action here, so being home won't be useful, but maybe internally finding our home will be useful. But more importantly, it seems like, fighting for what's right, fighting for this idea of tzedek, this idea of the Jupiter in our lives, whatever it is that we need to, the big energy we need to do to bring in those swords and scepters and sovereignty right now, and not sit at home doing nothing. This says move out, be active, and that'll bring us forward into this time of Mayim Chayim, this waters of life, this gestation period that's coming up. And as we move toward that gestation period, I'm going to pull out a letter. Oh no, I have something that's broken. Interesting. Is that my olive? Oh my gosh. It looks like my olive broke in half. Interesting. It broke right on the diagonal line which separates the heaven and the earth. I'm going to see if I can find the other half of it real quick. Wow, I did not see that coming. I'm going to have to make another set, it looks like. Now, this is my first attempt at making this. Here it is. I found it in the bag, at the bottom of the bag. Is that it? Oh no, it's not olive. Interesting. I'm glad I looked. It is tzadi. Okay. So we have the letter tzadi, which is the first letter of the word tzedek, or tzedakah. So we have broken justice here. Wow, fascinating. We have brokenness with our righteousness. Something's broken in our righteousness, and we need to focus on this. So tzadi is said to be a bent nun with a yud on its back. So nun is about humility and humbleness, and the yud on the back is the divine name. So a tzaddik, or somebody who is righteous and really is humble, but looking for righteousness in the world at the same time. And tzadi corresponds to the idea of thought in the world, and it's broken. So I found that fascinating. I did not expect that. I did not notice that, and I did think it was olive because all I saw was the diagonal and the yud on it, but it's tzadi. So again, like I said, tzedek is the word for Jupiter, and we have the sage, which corresponds to Jupiter, as well as the planet Jupiter corresponding to the letter Gimel. Excuse me. So, wow, a lot going on here. So what's going to help us as we move into this idea, this gestation time, is focusing on righteousness and tzedakah, and that which will bring balance back to justice in the world and repair. So like tikkun olam, which is we speak of tikkun olam as repair of the world, repairing that which is unjust, and we literally have a broken tzadi here, so that's just appropriate. And what isn't going to work for us right now in this time of gestation is Yud. And Yud is focusing on, Yud is that seed. It is the seed of a thing that comes into being. So like the one point out of which the Big Bang occurs is the Yud. And the Yud is also the hand. It's the first letter of the name of the divine. So I'm trying to see how that fits in with what's not working here. Let me think for a second. Let me just sit for a second with that. What it seems to be saying to me is, rather than focusing on the seed or the potential for a thing, actually be active. Claim your sovereignty. Work toward justice, rather than thinking about all the potential that could be. Just get up and do it. You've been surrounded with protection. You've got this gestation period right now where you have the time to do something in the world. So don't just think about, oh, potentially one day I will do a thing. Get up and do it. Get up and move forward. Move forward with sovereignty. Move forward with your scepter and your sword, and repair what we've got needing to be repaired right now. And if that comes to be, what will come in our future is Ayin. And Ayin is about sight. It's about being able to see. It's about it's about sight and vision and the ability to see what is happening in the world. It is the number 70, and so it's like this ultimate completion number of the 7 here. 7 times 10 being 70, and 7 being a completion number. You've got the ultimate completion here. That idea of the 70 cycles of 70 in the Torah. We've got 70 descendants of Noah. We've got 70 souls that went to Egypt. We've got 70 elders in the desert, and it also has to do with laughter. So as we move forward through this time of action and repair and gestation, and not sitting in our house and not focusing on potential, but actually moving out into the world, doing something active, know that we are protected, know that we have the ability to do some repair, and we will be rewarded with vision, sight, and laughter. So for those of you who chose the sage, which is again a protective element, and also corresponding to Jupiter, and many types of healing, including perhaps Tikkun Olam, this is your reading for the month of Elul, as you sit with yourself and the things that you need to repair in yourself and in the world. I wish you Chodesh Tov. Have a wonderful Shabbat and new moon, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Hi, folks who chose the Leek blossom. I'm going to talk a little bit about leeks for a second. We know that they're mentioned in the Torah as a plant that was in Egypt when the Israelites were traveling in the wilderness. They constantly complained that they could go back to Egypt where there were leeks. We had leeks to eat. So it is a food that has been around for many millennia. It was even said it would be one of the favorite vegetables of the Emperor Nero. It's a national emblem of the country of Wales, along with the daffodil. And the leeks are mostly used for cooking. They are one of the allium family, like an onion, and they are delicious. And I don't know what the magical properties of leeks are, but I'm assuming that it's not unlike garlic, which is another one of the alliums, which is a protective measure for people. So leeks are beautiful, they're delicious, and they are protection. So those of you who chose the leek today, I've got a reading for you about the month of Elul coming up. And we're going to pull out 3 letters to begin with, and then we will pull out more as need be. And the first one coming up on the left, we have the letter Bet. And that has come up in all 3 readings so far, so that's interesting. The next letter in the center, we have Dalet. And the third letter that's coming up right now is the letter Ayin. Okay. So Bet is a house. It is the second letter of the alphabet, and it is about the home, any building, genuinely. So a home, an institution of learning, a temple, and it is also said to be the body because it is the home of the soul. And the word Bet rules over, in time, it rules over the day of Shabbat, the day of rest. And Shabbat is about sitting in the house. It's shev and bait, sit in the house. So taking care of resting, taking care of maintaining one's home, one's body, one's temple, whatever that means to you. And yeah, especially with rest. Bet is the binary of life and death in the Sefer Yetzirah. Many of the double letters, all the double letters, have a binary foundation. And Bet is life and death. So ideally, we're dealing with choosing life right now, and taking care of our home, taking care of our body, taking care of our temple, and whatever that is. It also is about the mouth in the body. In the body soul is about mouth, so it has something to do with communication as well, communicating effectively. What's happening right now in our reading is Dalet. Dalet is a doorway or a gate. It is the 4th letter of the alphabet, and it has to do with humility, humbleness, being humble, and self-nullification. The King David Melech, King David, begins with the Dalet, and was a king who came from humble origins and has remained humble into his kinghood, kingship. It has to do with the four creation elements of earth, air, fire, and water, and the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. 4 letters of the name of God. Anything that has to do with 4 refers back to Dalet. It has to do with the 4 types of Torah study. The simple, which is called Pashat, the alluded to Remez, the allegorical Drash, and the Kabbalistic or mystical of Sod. And so it's a doorway into Torah and learning. In the binary foundation of the double letter of Dalet, we have wisdom and foolishness. So ideally, we're calling in wisdom right now, but beware of foolishness in one's life. And walk through that doorway. This is where we are. We're in this gateway right now between the month of Av and the month of Elul. as we're walking into this month that is preparing us for the new year. And so that's where we're sitting right now in the present. And we have coming up for us the letter Ayin. And Ayin is the letter that represents the eye in the body. So it's about vision and seeing, but also being watched over by the divine in the world. So it says that that Hashem, or Shekhinah, watches over us and all of Israel. And it is the number 70 in Gematria. 7 times 10, and 7 is a completion letter, and a completion number in the number of days of creation, and 10 times 7 is that to its ultimate degree. So this number 70 is incredibly important in terms of a completion of the completion of the creation, and also the 7 times 7 days in a week. There's seven cycles of 70 in the Torah. There are 70 descendants of Noah who went on to inhabit the world. There are 70 souls that went down to Egypt from Yaakov's house. There are 70 elders in the desert along with Moshe, and there are 70 seats on the Sanhedrin. It has to do with laughter, the foundation of laughter. And again, vision, being able to see and to maybe laugh at these completions of this, where we're moving forward into the new year and hopefully finding joy and laughter. I'm going to pull out a couple more letters to clarify our present and future situation here with this Leek. Above the Dalet we have the letter Samech. And Samech is a circle. It's about circles and cycles. It's about wheels, the wheel of the year, and maybe even reincarnation. It is the number 60 in Gematria, and has to be with being surrounded with comfort and protection. The Paleo Hebrew Samech was a thorn, and so this idea of thorns surrounding our field or surrounding our home so that we have protection. And it also has to do with the foundation of agitation in the Sefer Yetzirah. So it can be agitation in terms of something that is unpleasant, like anger or frustration, or it can have to do with agitation that is happy, like excitedness or joy. So that's where what we should focus on, that idea of being surrounded and protected and excited, perhaps, in order to walk through this doorway, this excitement about walking through the doorway, knowing that we're protected as we move forward. And what isn't going to help us in this is the Chet. Chet is the number 8, so it is about infinity, 7 being the number of days in creation. Chet is 8, so it has to do with one more than creation, which would then be infinity. And 8 on its side looks like an infinity symbol. So it also has to do with speech and the throat in the body. But the first time that Chet appears in the Torah is in the word choshek, which is darkness. And so in this position, in this layout, it may be that we're to release darkness, or not focus on the darkness or the infinite, the unformed void, but instead, as we walk through that doorway, look toward protection and being surrounded with comfort, and that everything is a cycle, that even though there's darkness, we can look forward to the cycle of the new year coming as we walk through this doorway. And as we get into that new place of vision and laughter next, it's coming up in Elul, what may help us is the letter Mem. And Mem is one of the mother letters. It is the mother letter that means water and gestation. It is this time where we are sitting in a womb of sorts with water surrounding us as we gestate and move forward into the new year. And Elul is this time where we are contemplating what's come before, how we will change as we move into the future. And so it may be a time to focus on that gestation. And Mem is the number 40 in Gematria, and it represents the 40 weeks of gestation in the human. So Mem could be a really good place to focus when we are looking or trying to see what's coming ahead, is this moment of gestation. It represents the belly in the body, and this balance of loving kindness, balance between the fire above and the air, those three mother letter elements, which are Aleph being air and Shin being fire. Mem is the water part of that. So it speaks also to the 13 attributes of the divine. And people say that Torah is like water. It's the water of life, the Mayim Chaim, that comes to us. So we can focus on this, focus on Torah, focus on learning, focus on gestation as we move forward through Elul. And what will not help us is Zayin. And Zayin is it's about, sorry about that. It's about power. And so it's a sword or a scepter, and so it's about power, but it's also the number 7, and 7 is one of the lucky numbers. It's, you know, it represents the number of days of creation. Interesting, we've got infinity here with 8, and 7 being the number of days of creation. So as we're looking forward in Ayin to the future, and we are, you know, enjoying laughter, it's better to focus on gestation and what is the incubation of this time of Elul, where we are thinking about our, again, what needs to happen for Teshuvah, and let go of trying to control things, let go of power of that, and let go of the idea of this is the end, this is the completion. Instead, focus on the unknown, what will be coming after we sit through this gestation period. And what we have as the outcome for this, as I reach into my little bag, is the letter Shin. Nice. Shin is the mother letter that represents fire. And fire can be passion. It can be about anger, for sure, but it also has to do with just passion, fire, thought in the head. It represents the head and the body, and it represents the sun and the stars and the moon above in the sky, the fiery lights in the sky. And it's got all this symbolism in it. It has many yuds being the smallest particle, like atoms that make up the universe. It also has many vavs, so it has 3 flames here on the top, as if the fire is burning. It has this connection with the Shekhinah, which is presence. It has this connection with the word shalom, which is wholeness. It has a connection with Shana, like Rosh Hashanah, so it's the new year. It has this connection with change, Shini. So there's so many things that Shin can correspond to that have to do with wholeness, completion, turning over of the year, like we have with Samech up here. It has to do with grace in terms of one of the foundations, and it is the head in the body, as I said, and it is summer in time. So that's where we are right now in the year. Of course, the word Aish, which means fire, has the Shin and has the Aleph, and the Shin, the air, and the fire together make up Aish, and it is the number 300. So that's what's coming, is this idea of passion and I guess light, the light of the fire, the warmth of the fire as it's coming. So as we came out of our place of home in Beit, and we are walking through this doorway of Elul into the new, the preparation for the new year, it's good to focus on that which surrounds us with protection and with love, and not focus so much on darkness or that unformedness that is frightening sometimes. And that will bring us into this time of being able to see more clearly, to have vision, to have laughter even. And what will get us through this next period of time is the idea of gestation. That's sitting with ourselves, maybe sitting like someone who is meditating, like a hermit. The hermit is the symbol for the month of Elul. And so sitting in gestation as we figure out where we're going next, letting go of trying to control things and the power and the idea that, oh, soon this will be over and we'll be done with it. Because then we move through vision into fire, into this passion of what's coming in the new year. And I love that because the leek, is kind of a little spicy too. It's got that spiciness and flavor that gives us more to look forward to. Rather than looking back to Egypt, let's look forward into the new year of 5783 coming up right after Elul, and let's look forward to the sound of the shofar as well. And for those of you who chose the leek, that is your reading for this upcoming new month of Elul as we prepare for Rosh Hashanah. I hope you have a wonderful new month, a new Chodesh Tov, and we will see you next time.